Why does every recipe I try need 18 ingredients, including a jar of something paste I'll never use again, but will sit in my fridge for 9 months? I just want dinner in the oven, fast. That's why I love Blue Apron's new one-pan assemble and bake meals. They send you fresh ingredients that are already chopped. All you do is put it all together and bake. That's it. No chopping, no weird leftovers, just delicious, easy-to-make meals. Get 20% off your first 2 orders with code APRON20. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
Residents at Brightview Senior Living Communities enjoy enhanced possibilities, independence, and choice. Brightview Dulles Corner in Herndon and Brightview, Great Falls, offer vibrant senior independent living, assisted living, and memory care services through various daily programs and cultural events. Chef-prepared meals, safety and security, transportation, resort-style amenities, and high-quality care. Everything you need is here. Discover more at brightviewseniorliving.com. Equal housing opportunity.
Hello and welcome to mini episode number 471 of Real Life Ghost Stories, and I have 2 spooky stories for you today, and the last story comes from the 14th of May 2025, and story number 1 comes from Renata. I have a bunch of ghost stories for you, but I'll start with just the house I grew up in. This is going to jump around a little, but I think it's the best way to tell just a few of the stories. I now know that it's a portal, but at the time, we just thought it was due to living next door to a very dangerous, busy highway. We saw and felt different spirits all of the time. My mother, my brother, grandparents, and even visiting family all witnessed events. My mom in particular would see people, usually in pale or white clothing, pass by windows, walking through the backyard. When she would get up to check why someone was in our yard, no one would be around. We lived on about 2 acres of land, half of that being woods. Fields were beyond that. You would have to walk through all that to come into our yard from that way. One afternoon I was watching TV in our living room with my grandfather. Mom was mowing the large front yard. We had huge bay windows in the living room and I could see her clearly. I noticed that when she came close she was looking into the window strangely. After a couple of these rounds, I went outside assuming she wanted me to take over or that she needed something. Instead, she asked who was visiting us. I told her no one, and she insisted someone was standing next to my grandfather's wheelchair. They were tall and, again, pale. She always said they were angels, but it could have been spirits as well. When my brother was a young teenager, our cousin visited for the weekend. They stayed in the half-finished basement so they could watch TV late and be normal young guys. Halfway through the night, they both woke up to 5 white blobs floating a few feet away. They couldn't move or speak for about an hour. They weren't what I would call orbs, as they were described as kind of amorphous instead of round. When I was 13, my brother died at 17 years old. I moved into his room a week later as my grandparents moved in with us full time and they needed my larger room. Now, I was a typical annoying little sister and he hated me in his room. I was plagued with his pranks. My radio and TV would turn on and off. My bedside lamp would randomly fall over when I was up too late reading. I know it wasn't my mom turning things off as she is not tech-minded. Her answer to music playing too loud was usually to unplug my radio. She didn't bother finding buttons. The basement was always a gamble to go into when I was a teenager, and why I believe there was a portal. Some nights I could spend hours down there painting, reading, playing video games or watching TV. Nothing bothered me. Other times, however, I would only last a few minutes before I had to leave. It would feel heavy, terrifying. Now, when you went down the steps, you could go 3 ways. To the left was our furnace room with a workspace. The middle was the rec room type area. It held the TV, the bed, the couch, the pool table, another fireplace that linked to the main furnace. That is where I spent most of my time. To the right was storage and a bathroom. I believe the portal was at the centre of these rooms. It didn't have true hallways, just openings, but it felt like being in completely different sections of the house when you went from one to the other. There was a small curtain separating the stairs and storage from the rec room. For some reason, that curtain scared the shit out of me. I couldn't have it closed, ever. I didn't hear or feel anything with me, but when the other rooms were blocked off, even by thin fabric, I would have near panic attacks. One night my mom asked me to take down some boxes to the furnace room so we could use it to start a fire as it was getting cold. I was halfway down the steps when I saw it. On the wall to my left there was a hatchet for cutting wood. It hung from 2 nails by the blade. It was swinging back and forth on those nails. No one else was down there. No pets, no wind, no rain coming in the wood-throwing window. No reason for that hatchet to be moving. I threw the box in the general direction of the room and I noped the fuck out. Similar to the poisoner's cabinet when they have an arsenic alarm every time arsenic is mentioned, I feel like we need to have a portal alarm every time portal is mentioned on this podcast, because I talk all the time about how much I dislike portals. And I mean that as in I dislike portals as a concept, and it's purely because of TV shows like Ghost Adventures, where every place they go to, they're like, oh, it's a portal, and I just find it annoying. However, Renata, that is not to say that I do not think your house is a portal, because as I was listening to this, I was like, Renata is right, this house is a portal. So for someone who spends a lot of time disparaging the ideas of portal, I sure do also spend a lot of time talking about portals and agreeing that places are portals. And it's really interesting that your mum would see these people in, white clothing pass by the windows. It's, to see that kind of regularly, and then to say, I saw a pale, tall figure standing next to grandfather's wheelchair, etc. I understand the desire to say, oh, they're angels or guardian angels or whatever, because it kind of makes it easier to live with, doesn't it? It makes it easier to manage if you think this is something that is fundamentally good, pure and positive, that is just passing through. And it doesn't really feel like anything that you saw in your house, like these kind of pale figures passing through outside, standing next to the wheelchair, even these amorphous blobs that were floating downstairs. It doesn't really feel like any of those were particularly bad, right? They didn't seem to be malevolent or doing anything that was causing harm to the family. And I think it's a really lovely thing that, after your brother passed away, that you were plagued with his pranks, because it is a fundamental truth that older siblings hate younger siblings in their room, because they're like, shut up, this is my space, get out. So I do think it's very sweet that he was then playing these pranks. And I wonder if, so this heavy, terrifying feeling that you would have in this basement, I wonder if it was about this proximity to where you believed this portal was. You know what I mean? That actually it was like an overwhelming feeling that then filled you with dread. And again, it's really interesting that it was only sometimes. Like sometimes you could spend hours down there and be absolutely fine, but sometimes then it was like, I can't be in this room. Although a swinging hatchet, that feels pretty threatening to me.
It's that time of year again, back to school season, and Instacart knows that the only thing harder than getting back into the swing of things is getting all the back-to-school supplies, snacks, and essentials you need. So here's your reminder to make your life a little easier this season. Shop favorites from Staples, Best Buy, and Costco, all delivered through Instacart, so that you can get some time back and do whatever it is that you need to get your life back on track. Instacart, we're here.
Ever wonder why you have insurance for your car or home, but not your digital life? Meet WebRoot Total Protection, your digital bodyguard that is built for real life. WebRoot takes the guessing game out of cybersecurity, so you can confidently browse, bank, and be yourself online without the worry of hackers lurking around the corner. With WebRoot Total Protection, you get antivirus that scans 6 times faster and takes up 33 times less space than the other guys. Identity protection with up to $1 million in fraud expense reimbursement and 24/7 U.S.-based customer support. VPN protection that hides your IP address, personal data, and location from hackers. And cloud backup with unlimited storage that works automatically in the background. With plans for individuals and families, Webroot makes it easy to live a better digital life. Go to webroot.com/promo and get 50% off today. That's webroot.com/promo to get 50% off today. Live a better digital life with Webroot, because peace of mind shouldn't be optional.
And our second story today comes from Jayde. I'll start by saying I have many, many stories from when I was 3 to 4 years old through the years to now being 38. I'm from a lineage of women who have many ghostly experiences. This one still shakes me to my core. It's a long one, so get your popcorn out. I had a 1-year-old son when my now ex-partner and I moved into his family's home. Against my will, I hated this house. It was relatively big by South African standards, but it felt hard to breathe in there. It felt heavy, if that makes sense. No matter how hard I tried, it always felt cold. No matter how much happy stuff, semi-precious stones and positive energies I flooded in there. But my ex made it sound like it would be a good move, and it was to help his dad, who lived in a little cottage on the property. The dad had a few unexplained stories of his own. We all scratched it up to being his late wife trying to communicate. I don't think that anymore. My ex and I slept on opposite sides of the house. He should have woken up to the commotions and the noise, but he never did. The time came when my son was about 2. He developed speech very quickly, and by 2 he was speaking in almost full, clear sentences. He had a playroom down a long hall that opened up into a little room that connected to the backyard. This room connected to the living room, dining room, kitchen and the front of the house. Our rooms were down the long hallway on the opposite end of the playroom. His bedroom was directly across from mine. My room had 3 steps leading down into a big open room that had double doors opening up onto a backyard patio. I couldn't see the hall from my bed. The 4-night horror started. Night 1, like any other, my son had 2 noisy toys. I'm not one that thinks kids should be seen and not heard, so I love these noisy toys. Or I did. One was similar to a piano style. Each of the 5 buttons played a different song, and at a press of another smaller button would switch to animal sounds. But there was no way of switching the sounds off mid-recording, even when switching the toy off. The other was a car steering wheel with 6 buttons playing different motor vehicle sounds. An engine starting, a beep beep, a police siren, etc. On this particular night, my son played with the piano one just before going to bed to listen and dance to his favourite song. My son woke up screaming for me in the early hours of the morning. The type of scream when kids are in full terror. I thought he just had a bad dream, so I went to his room faster than my eyes could open from being in a deep sleep. I consoled him back to sleep and put him back into his crib. I looked at my phone to see the time, 3:25, and I went back to sleep. Night 2, the same ritual with the piano toy. He insisted on playing his favourite song before bed. I remember laying these toys out on the playmat, and after the song finished, I switched off both of them and put them into the toy box at the top. 3 a.m. the toys started playing at a deafening volume in the dead quiet of the night. I got up thinking I must not have switched them off, and maybe they eventually slipped and fell into the toy box, hitting the buttons that made them play. I was too exhausted and ripped them out of the toy box and laid them flat on the floor. I hurried back to bed, because I've seen 1 or 2 horrors involving damn kids' toys, but I fell asleep pretty fast. Unlike me. 3:30 a.m, my son wakes up screaming that blood-curdling scream again. I shot into his room so fast I don't even remember getting up the stairs or switching on my bedside light. I scooped him up and he said through sobs, "There's a man." The light was shining in the room so I could see there was no one around. But I had a very uneasy feeling and did not want him going back to sleep in that room. He slept with me the rest of the night. The next morning, getting dressed for the day, he showed where the man was standing and almost imitated him from the door and moved strangely next to his crib. I asked, "Is he a happy man?" And he said, "No, he's a scary man." So matter-of-factly. I asked if he could see his face and got a, "No, he's just black," and went on his merry way. I made a note to go to the playroom to check the toys. They'd been switched off. There was no way they should have played even if a button was pushed. I took the batteries right out and put them in a drawer in the kitchen. Night 3, 3 a.m. I woke up to a soft bang on the door. Thinking it was my cat catching moths or just being a cat, I drifted back to sleep. With my cat sleeping on me. It couldn't have been her. I even remember her getting a fright and jolted at the bang, which probably woke me up more than the bang did. 3:15 a.m. There are the toys again, playing loud, with no batteries in them. Remember I said there's no way to switch the song off mid-song, you had to wait for the song to finish? The song cut off halfway, and then the siren played, cutting off halfway. I got a feeling like someone was in my house. I switched on my bedside light and listened for an intruder and finally drifted back to sleep. Night 4, happy to go to bed because I was exhausted from the previous night's lack of sleep. I fell asleep fast. 3:15 a.m, my son screamed mommy in a more frightened, desperate, blood-curdling way than I have ever heard in my life. A true life or death fear scream. Of course, I switched on the bedside light and shot through to his room, ready to switch on his light when I saw him. The man, who I thought was someone that broke in and wanted to steal my baby, he was standing over my child's crib looking straight at him. I got that feeling of hot and cold tingles all over my body, goosebumps, and took a step back and in a split second thought, my baby, and mom protector mode kicked in. I clacked on the light and ran to beat the life out of this man standing in my son's room, but he was gone. I grabbed my son and held him close. He said over and over and over, "The man, the man, the man," trying to get me to move to my room. I said in a very stern, calm voice, "Leave us the fuck alone." I took all his comfort blankies and teddies and moved us into my room. As we were settled into bed and my son lying in my arms, of course still with the lights on, we heard a huge bang at the glass patio door. This man was angry. My son asked, "What's that?" I had to respond as calmly as I could. "It's just the wind, my boy." My heart was beating in my ears and I shushed my son to sleep. I stayed awake the rest of the night, lights on, scrolling on my phone, doing lists and sorting the mountain of things moms have to do, and Googling protection rituals. In the morning, the glass in the door was cracked. My son explained again where the man moves. His whole posture would change as he imitated the man. It freaked me out. I went full white witch that day. I saged the house, praying for protection and any stale energy to be cleared. I had dream catchers packed away. I hung them up. I took out the protection and love stones and laid them around the house, but particularly around our rooms. I made protection art and charged it with Reiki. I am a practitioner. I did the salt, the cinnamon at the doors. I did any and every folklore protection routine I could find over the next few days. I remember my mom asked us to come and sleep at hers the next night and I jumped at the offer. The man never came back, but my son still talks about him often almost 2 years later. That house never felt good. I was so happy to move out and make a safe space of our own. I do a protection session on my son every time he has to go back there to visit his dad. Maybe that energy was attached to my ex, maybe the house. Whatever it was attached to, I never want to experience that again or come close to them. Well, that was truly horrifying. And listen, if nothing else, this is a lesson in you always go with your gut, right? Because you were like, I don't want to move into this house. I know, obviously, oftentimes people, you don't have a choice. You can't say, I don't move into that house because it doesn't feel good. And people be like, oh God, like shut up. Like, that's not real. Come on, you're moving in. It's a great opportunity, whatever. But if your gut just knows, and that goes for every aspect of life. And we all know at this point that kids are crazy conduits. Just when kids start talking about weird shit, just get rid of them immediately. Drop kick down the stairs. See you later, you creepy little kid. I'm not dealing with this. Obviously, I am joking when I say things like that. To be clear, we do not condone the harming of children in this house, no matter how creepy and spooky they actually are. And it kind of feels like there was an escalation over that period of time, right? Like, was this man sort of letting you know that it was there? You know what I mean? By making the toys go off, and then you take the batteries out, the toys are still going off. And obviously at this point, your little boy is saying there's a man and imitating the way that he walked. That really gave me the heebie-jeebies. Like, that made my toes curl. The idea of this little boy being like, there's a man that's coming into my room and he's just Black Shadow and this is the way he walks. Ugh, hideous. And that is some serious don't fuck with my child energy when you're sprinting into that room and being like, leave us the fuck alone. You physically see this entity standing over your child's cot and you're like, absolutely not. Not on my watch. I'm taking out every folkloric practice I can find and you are not going to upset my child. Jade, you are welcome in my house any day to scare away bad energy. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Thank you to Renata and Jade for sending in your stories. Remember, the last story came from the 14th of May 2025. And if you would like to send in your story, you can do so by emailing it to reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. And if you've been wondering whether or not you should send in your story, this is my nudge to you. Because October is coming up, you guys know what that means. We'll be doing 31 Days of Terror, as we do every October. So if you are waiting to send your story, or if you've been procrastinating about it, now is the time. Send it in. You can also check out the website reallifeghoststoriespodcast.com, and if you are desperate for some extra content, you can subscribe to the Patreon. That is patreon.com/reallifeghoststories, where for $5 a month or $2 a month you can get access to heaps of extra content, as well as every single main and mini episode completely ad-free. And on that note, I shall see you next time.